Hello and welcome to this edition of the We Are LPS podcast. Mr. Hime, thank you for joining me.
I'm glad to be here.
You know, we've done, this will be our fourth one for our families, and I have decided we are going to change our name from We Are LPS podcast to Time with Hime. What do you think?
It rhymes. It's kind of catchy.
All right. We are excited to have our families join us, and we have some of your questions that you've asked over the past week, and we're going to share that with Mr. Hime. So let's get right into it. Okay, sir?
Yeah, thank you guys for joining. I feel good that we get this opportunity to share so we can answer questions and help have that communication with our parents.
That's right. And we have a lot of them, and I think we can get some of these questions answered today. So let's get into the first one. What is enrollment? And that's kind of been a sticky question because it's already taking place. So can you clarify?
Yeah, I mean, in the old traditional, how we enrolled in 2019 and 18, students that were already enrolled or were returning, we had a check-in with them somewhere along the way. Students that are new to the district could enroll. So as of now, if you were new to the district, you can go online and enroll. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a step for everyone, and we're going to try to make it a seamless step so we can do a check-in for all students who are going to go, because the one thing we have to know is, we're offering various options, and we've kind of narrowed it to two, virtual or traditional, and we just need to know, are you going to go virtual or traditional? Now, the blended option is still part of the traditional, so we're not taking away choices. It's just that we need to know if you're going to spend time in the building or you're not going to spend time in the building as we make these plans and get them written. So we'll be getting out in the probably early next week. We're going to send everybody a form where you're going to be able to list with your school, your choice of virtual or traditional, and then we're going to start contacting parents and have for special circumstances you may have and such, because the first thing, we know we want as many kids back in the building as possible, but we know some kids are going to be better served at home. We're working really hard. We've got a lot of staff members spending a lot of time and effort to produce quality lessons for home, to get it where we can use outside resources, things the district has purchased, but use our teachers' expertise and combine that to create a learning experience in an environment where students can learn at home.
And when you talk about teacher-produced lessons, we do have some sample models that we're going to share with our families on our website so that they can see what it looks like to be at home virtually with Lawton Public Schools.
That's one of the ideals we want, is to make sure that our parents know that, and there was going to be choices. I mean, we're going to have different teachers be able to build on their lessons. So, if you're an individual teacher and you're listening to this, if your student's virtual, we want to make sure you understand you're going to have some flexibility with how that content is taught, and you're going to be able to add to what we're putting in and what we're going to put out and share.
Another question that our families had, and that is, will LPS be requiring uniforms this year, and what grade levels?
Well, when I moved here, that was a question I got asked numerous times about uniforms. And one of the things that I had was different sites enforce that differently. So one thing I've talked to the board about and we've had discussions about is we've got to be consistent across the board. Obviously, the term uniform, when I talked to the administrators, it was really just their dress code. And in the modified dress code, some people called it uniforms. How that's enforced at the middle schools and the high schools is going to be consistent, and how it's enforced at the elementaries, the goal is to be consistent. So be sure and work with your building principal and make sure, when you're going to school, those things are consistently enforced. One thing we don't want to do, and we'll talk about forever, we do not want to create any hardship for our parents, as far as what they're buying their kids and so much. So if you're going to make choices and you're about to buy school clothes and things, make sure you email or get a hold of the building and make sure you understand exactly what they're doing. Again, we're trying to bring those things in, build some consistency. It's just, that was one of the goals right on the top of my list in March when I got, when I was starting to transition in, was how are we going to make this look better for our parents? How are we going to have this dress code where it fits the needs of our parents, but also our principals and our administration and our board and our community is happy with it. And really, I will say that from my seat, the the coronavirus pushed this back and how we had other things have dominated our discussions other than uniforms. But one thing that we have not left out of our discussions is we are here to work with our parents, serve our parents, and creating a hardship for you as a parent is not one of our goals. So be sure and work with us and contact us, and we'll work with our parents to make that work.
The one thing that I'm really excited to talk about is this next topic. We've had a lot of parents that say, I work all day, and if my child decides to go virtually, how am I going to teach them, or they go to daycare? What does that look like? So we've talked about day and night options. Can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're really working hard on. How that looks, again, will be a part of the reason we're going to put out this early sheet we're going to put out, so that we can get a list in the number of parents who would need a night option. Because what we want to do is try to find teachers that work 3 to 9, 2 to 8, or different. We want to be flexible, and flexibility includes having a teacher available from 4 to 8. A second grade teacher may have 20 kids, and her availability is 4 to 8 for her online learning, and she's pushing lessons and sharing, and parents can talk back and forth with her. So we may have teachers working different schedules, and again, that gets to be the flexibility of staff members, because some staff members, their situation may warrant that they want to work from 2 to 9 instead of 8 to 3. So, those are things we're going to work at and balance really hard. We're going to look at some, we may hire a retired teacher to do a 4 to 8 with some students. Again, we may pay a math teacher to work on Monday nights from, 5 to 6 and pay them just to be available online for parents. So we're really going to work hard to create that full array of lessons and give parents as many options as we can so that students can get a quality education.
There's a question about class sizes. For those that come to the building, how are we managing the class size?
Well, we're going to manage the class sizes. Your goal is always to keep around 22 or 23. We do realize that in some cases you're going to have a building where 25 first graders show up. Well, you split it and you got 2 classes of 12, or, and those building principals are going to have to look at those. One thing we're talking to teachers about that's going to be a change is try to get, a lot of teachers have lots of centers and workstations and things like that in their room. And those things are going to have to be reduced, so there's more room for students to spread out, so we're not crowding our students. So that's going to be a different look. And obviously class sizes in some buildings, the classrooms are small, in some buildings are large, and how we make that work and try to keep social distancing is going to be a building to building issue. You're going to have questions about recess, you have questions about water fountains. We're right now looking to secure the bottle fillers, water fountains. And so we're, site to site. So the thing you're going to see out coming pretty quickly, and again, we're going to hopefully get those out early next week, is every site's plan for when students come back on campus. Because again, a lot of these questions, what they do at Freedom is going to be different than what they do at Almore West. What they do at Lawton High is going to be a whole lot different than what they do at Eisenhower Elementary. So, you as a parent, really, if you've got a kid in the first grade, you're not real concerned about what Lawton High's doing. You want to know what your child's doing. I told somebody yesterday, we work really hard to do what's best for 14,000 students, but we want parents to tell us what's best for one student, their student, so we can try to make those balance.
And when we talk about balancing that, we also talked about extracurriculars. So there was a question about how do the specials look like, music and PE? How will that be handled for our students?
Well, obviously we've not overload. PE is usually in a gym. There's a lot of space to spread kids out, and the PE teacher is going to have to work the same way with music. They're usually large classrooms and do a great job of spreading people out. Music with a mask on is kind of an interesting scenario. The more you read and the more we see, and the closer we get to starting the school, the more and more research and more data comes out that masks are everything. We at the office, everyone's wearing a mask. We both came in here with a mask a day. Everybody in this room has a mask on. We just took them off for the podcast because it's not real, but we've got our social distance. So we're going to work really hard to social distance so we don't have to force kids to wear masks. But we've come to the conclusion that when we're in situations where social distancing is not allowed, we're going to put masks on our students. And that's going to be a challenge because we don't want a pre-K teacher spending all of her time trying to get 4-year-olds to wear a mask. So some of those things are going to be a growing process.
Okay, now let's ask about some services. will LPS still offer extended day services for our families that had them?
We had that discussion, and if the need's there, we're definitely going to try to meet those needs and continue those, in a social distance manner, because there's going to be parents that need those. So yes, those are going to things based on site needs that we're going to try to continue to offer.
For the students that are traditionally in the building, and then a situation comes or a circumstance where they have to go hybrid or actually have to go home to quarantine or whatever that looks like, the question was, are we providing computers and devices?
We have ordered a device. We should have, when school starts on August 21st, a device for every student in our district. We have iPads for students pre-K, K1 and 2, 3 through 12. We're going to have a Chromebook. So each student will have their personal device. We're not going to let students take it home every day that are in, pre-K students. The parents nor us want to bringing them back and forth. But if a student gets home, we will get their device home to them. The one thing that we really want to put out to parents, because you get a little bit of both sides of this issue, but most parents I've talked to, they're really excited that we're going to offer insurance on these devices. So you're going to be required to pay a $30 insurance fee. Obviously, we'll work with you if you've got 4 students, and that's $120. We'll work with you to get it, but that insures that device. So if your student breaks it or whatever, then we will have it insured. So, and we're also going to have hotspots available, for students, and it'll be on a need basis, but that's going to be an insurance fee of $15. So for $45 of insurance that would insure the device for damage, a student could have their own Chromebook, their own Wi-Fi to work at home. So that'll be great for our students that go virtual, that aren't able to come to school. And if you go home for that 2 weeks, like you said, you'll have our device, our Wi-Fi if you need it, and then you will stay connected with your home teacher. You will not change teachers to the virtual. I told a parent this yesterday. That's the only way a student will go from traditional to virtual. If a parent comes in and says, "Hey, we're not coming back to traditional. We would like to be full-time virtual," and we will have that discussion, because we really, once you're assigned a traditional teacher, we would like for our students, as much as possible, to keep that teacher for the remainder of the year.
And that's important for relationship building as well.
Definitely for our littles. When we always talk about for our younger students, we know having one teacher and one go-to person and building that relationship is very important. So we want all of our students to have that teacher they feel comfortable with.
And before we take a break, I have one last question from our parent, and that is the school supplies. Do they need to purchase the same school supplies for virtual as they would for traditional?
That's a great question. We'll look at that. And again, that'll be a site-by-site basis. We're trying to reduce how many school supplies you need. Obviously, we're going online, things being done on a device, we're going to lessen the school supplies. So I'm going to say yes, because we're going to try to do the same lessons at school. There may be some variances, and then those protection of those supplies, obviously sharing supplies and things like that younger students get. That's an issue we worry a little bit about. But again, as we move closer to school starting, one thing we're getting from CDC is this is almost totally an airborne disease. You're not getting it from touching. Now we're installing hand sanitizers in every classroom and some of those things to help with, if you happen to use my pencil and then I take the pencil, or I pick up your pencil instead of mine, if we continuously keeping our students sanitizing their hand and they're wearing a mask, we feel like we're going to be really cutting edge on the safety side.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more questions from our families. Welcome back to part 2 of our Time with Hime podcast. Sir, before we left, I had a few more questions that I wanted to ask, and one of those was the virtual students. Are they able to participate in school function or activities such as the book fair or checking out of library books?
Yes. One of the things, the pre-K through 5 virtual students will still be assigned their school, so their elementary school, so that if they ever want to move back, they'll know what school they would move back to. Again, going back and forth is something we're going to allow. We're just not going to encourage it, because it's going to create numbers. We don't want it a lot. I mean, parents are going to be able to change their decisions. So yes, they'll be assigned to their school. So if you're at Eisenhower Elementary, they're having a book fair, you can go participate in the book fair. As far as secondary, your school will be the one you would compete in extracurricular activities as a virtual student. And that would kind of move you kind of to the traditional and the blended. We're just taking some of the words out. That's why as you follow in it, you'll see that although we're just saying, we're trying to simplify so our parents know that they're either virtual or traditional, but the flexibility under both of those still exists. In some places, they'll cross over. It's not like you're going to get in one lane or the other lane. We're going to try to do everything we can to create an environment where our teachers can feel safe to work and be effective as educators, and we're going to do it where our students feel safe at school and our parents feel like their students are safe at school. So the combination of that's going to be a hard thing, but we're going to work hard to continue that flexibility. So we want students to be involved in those things. So yes, we're going to make those things available. We're going to advertise them, and hopefully they do compete, because we don't want students to be totally isolated from their school.
Well, that face-to-face and contact with their peers is important, but we have to do so in a safe manner.
As much face-to-face as we can get, we're going to really work for.
All right. And when we were on our break, we kind of discussed school supplies, and parents did ask the question about, what if I can't find an item? And we were talking about sanitation specifically. So
yeah, Lysol wipes are really hard to find right now, and obviously we wish we could find those, but we want you to bring what we can. I mean, we're all in this together. And the thing we want right now is we want our students back at school. We're not going to deny student entry to school because they haven't found Lysol wipes. We're working to find ways with rags, paper towels, and some of the different fogging machines to disinfect classrooms and to try to disinfect areas. Ventilation is going to be important. So we're going to work to do that and help with that, so parents feel comfortable once again. But again, they're really pushing more to the most important thing I think our students bring as far as sanitation and safety is their mask, and making sure your student has a mask. And I know a lot of parents are having their kids wear a mask now. And that's something you can do in preparation for school, is make sure if you go to Walmart or you're out and around town, that even if your student's going to be a 5-year-old, you start getting them used to wearing a mask and get them prepared, because that keeps us all safe. I mean, again, if we got a first grader that just can't keep it on, we're going to work with them, but we're not going to send that student home because they can't wear a mask. We're going to work hard to get that where the student's used to it. It took me a while. I'm getting more used to it every day. I mean, it wasn't easy for me, and I'm 56, and it wasn't easy to get used to wearing that mask long periods of time. So we know it's going to be an adaptive process, and it's going to be a learning curve there for students to get used to it.
And we're working really hard to ensure that our plans include that flexibility while maintaining safety. So
yes, that's the number one goal. If you look at traditional, you're going to see our number one goal under traditional is to keep school as close to normal as possible, but safety will be our first priority.
Now, let's talk about special services. I know we haven't really delved into that, but our parents are asking what that looks like. And we had a meeting last week with our special services team. Would you like to share kind of the things that they're doing?
And some of the things they talked about, they're contacting parents. So make sure if you have questions, you ask them when they contact you. They may be contacting you to ask if you want to go back to school, but that's a good time to ask questions, because with the special services, we have students who have individual plans. And again, we've talked about trying to create an individual plan for all of our students. But students who have special needs that we have to meet, we need to have some one-on-one conversations. We can't just put out blanket. It's kind of like people really want us to put on writing a plan of how we're going to return to school and how things are going to look. Well, recess will not look the same at every site. So we have to put together 20 plans of how we're going to look coming back to school, because you're concerned about how your child's school is going to look like, not how my child's school is going to look like coming back. So we're working to create those plans where you as a parent, so individualized plans are also going to be there for some parents who have special needs. So we need to make sure, because if your child has some immune deficiencies but you want them back in school, we need to work to see if we can find a way to improve their social distancing and make sure we get them in a classroom with a teacher that's really, make sure the teacher knows, so that they enforce the mask a little tighter in those classrooms, and the kids around know. I mean, it's one of those things that we're going to work together, and we know that when we put it into perspective that me wearing a mask protects you, I'm pretty much going to be more likely to wear it. When I think, well, it doesn't really protect me, because that was where it was at first. Well, what really good does a mask do? Because we're thinking about ourselves, and we've moved on to, I know wearing a mask protects you.
What does it look like for our families to receive occupational therapy or, things that they would do on site if they're virtual?
Yeah, and those are going to be really tough because if they're virtual, they're going to have to probably come to a site to get it done because it's going to be hard for us to push those people in because that's one of the things we're hearing with the virus is pushing into homes is dangerous for our workers, not because, that's a lot more exposure. So those will be a case-by-case, situation-by-situation. We'll have to set those up and try to find a safe way to do that because a lot of the students that need those, the reason they're not coming back to regular school is they're high risk. And if they're high risk, we need to make sure we're minimizing that risk. So again, individual basis, we're going to do everything we can to meet those needs and obviously get them the services that are in their IEP that they deserve and need.
And our special services team is wonderful getting all of that taken care of. So, and they're moving buildings right now as we speak.
Yep, they're moving to Brockland. We've remodeled that a little bit because, again, they were at Douglas. What we're doing now with Douglas is because of our virtual side in the expansion of the things we're doing at Douglas. Douglas is basically, it'll be totally the virtual side. So when you look at traditional and you see virtual, the virtual is kind of Douglas. Now the elementary, pre-K through 5 are still with their homeschool. But we're very excited about that and where we're going with that. And some of the things we're doing, we may continue past. The ideal of having teachers available at night, if they're willing to work a night shift, those are things we may have where parents can have a hotline to call and say, because, one of the tough things, parents go to work all day, they came home, they're sitting down and working with their students, and they're sitting at the table and they have a question. And sometimes, even I've worked with my grandson. He's first grader going to second grade. And sometimes I
couldn't do it.
I would like
now.
to, what is it? Phone a friend.
That's right.
I'd like to phone a friend. So.
I have to sometimes. I'm like, did we learn? Yes, we did learn that. We just it's a different way of learning now. Yeah. So that's right. And so thank you for sharing that information. Just know that our special services team is going to reach out to our families. And if they haven't contacted you yet, they're working down their phone tree. So you can always email us and let us know that you haven't been in contact with them, and we'll share your information with them as well.
Yeah, and we're welcoming communication. Phone calls, emails to us, we really like. And we're welcoming that communication. And hopefully we're showing that in this podcast because we're trying to address the questions we're hearing and those questions that are emailed to us. And we want to continue that because I want to answer everyone's questions to the best of my ability. I don't have all the answers. And some of these questions you're asking or some of them come in, I have to go find the answers. I email and talk to superintendents all over the state. We're in this together. And I find out what different school districts are going to do and like school districts are going to do to develop, say, hey, this does work. We have a leadership team. We have an executive leadership team that you're part of that we meet, and we spend hours going over some of these things to try to come up with the answers that we think best fits the needs of our students.
Well, and let's continue on with our safety. In that regard, we have had questions about substitutes and traveling teachers. How does that look?
Well, one thing we've already talked about is we're going to allow our buildings to hire full-time subs. So a sub will be located at that building. Now, obviously, that won't fill all the needs. Like Lawton High, we may let them hire 3 or 4. Or Freedom, 3 or 4, depending on how many students are in there and how many teachers, but get some full-time subs on. Use our substitutes that are on our substitute list, but instead of having them open, they will just report every day to that building, and they'll be the first sub. But they'll be familiar with the kids in that building. They'll be familiar with the teachers in that building, the procedures, and that'll be a safer. So they're not moving building to building. We do have some teachers that share. But, we're going to try to limit that where they're only sharing back and forth 2 sites, our traveling teachers. But, again, mask, our adults are going to wear masks. So we just feel like that's, we're going to take the hand sanitizers and the mask and have follow all the safety protocols.
And we hear a lot about masks, but we have had the questions from our parents that will face shields work, and what does that look like?
I think that's some things we're still discussing. Face shields, what I'm seeing with the CDC, and when I asked the health department a few weeks ago, and we'll probably get an update on that and continue to look, face shields protect me, but they don't protect you. So if I'm wearing a face shield, I'm protecting myself, but I'm not protecting you. And that's not, we're looking for something that protects you from me. And so, and they're not even as good, the protection is not great. So a lot of the things the CDC and I'm seeing, face shields are not the same of a mask. Now, if a student, that's the only thing they're comfortable wearing, we're flexibility. We just got to be flexible. And some of our teachers that are really high risk, you need to see their face when they teach. So they may teach in a face shield, because although they say it only protects me, not you, we know it's going to keep. It's common sense that it doesn't go as far. It does get out and over, and I mean, there's just so many. We just learn so much more every day. It's kind of amazing. Yeah, we're going to work hard to be flexible. But again, how do we keep everybody safe, but keep everybody effective and comfortable? And that's going to be an important. It's going to be work. We just got to work together. Each side's going to have to develop some plans, and we're going to work with those plans and sit down as leadership and try to make them as close as we can. So we're going to work hard to get those out next week so parents can start looking at those plans and better get understanding. And I'm going to tell you right now, we want your input on them. We worked on a plan yesterday for how virtual would look to try to get where parents could understand. We invited some parents in that had never seen the plan to look at it. And they, well, what does that word mean? Well, we're putting it up there in teacher talk, so we changed the word to parent talk. We reworded some things. Well, I'm not, and so their feedback, we think we improve that document. So feedback from you helps improve what we're putting out. So that's something we're really working on, because we do care what you think. And again, that's why we're doing this podcast, because we want to know what you think. We want to try to make you comfortable. And every day somebody asks me something, or a question comes to me that somebody asked, that I'm like, why didn't I think of that? I haven't answered that yet. Why haven't we done that? I will say for sure, I think the podcast or a podcast for two, you said people were asking about, what if we work all day? How are we going to teach our kids at night? And I got and it just, well, why aren't we offering night school? Why don't we have teachers, why don't we find and see if some teachers are willing to do it nights, and make that available to our parents. And so we are listening.
Yes, sir. And to that note, listening and seeing what's going around our district and in neighboring districts, we've had the question, okay, CPS is, going virtual. What does that look like for LPS? What am I supposed to do? So can you address that?
Well, again, we have that option, but we also have the brick and mortar option. And as of right now, we're gonna continue on with the brick and mortar option for those parents who need that for their students and they want that for their students. Right now, that brick and mortar option is going to require mask. Strongly required. The younger you get, the less, the harder it is. We got to be flexible with what required means. If you're a senior in high school, it means pretty much you need to have a mask on. If you're an adult, you're pretty, required means required. But if you're, 4-year-old pre-K student, required is hopefully they have them. We have ordered 100,000 masks, 75,000 small masks. So we're going to have paper masks available. So when the smaller kids, if they don't have their mask or they lost it or it got tore up, we'll have a mask for them when they're doing in their transitions and going to so that when they're in larger groups, because obviously we can't just let you drop your student off. We've talked about adjusting hours of some of our people. So when kids are getting to school early and they're congregating together, that we have somebody to let them in the gym and watch them so that they can be spread out in the gym. So some of those things we're working on. So we are definitely working on, hey, how do we make this work? And how do we all work together to get it done? This is a struggle for all of us. It's easier for some of us than others, but we need to all work together and be a team. And as a team, we can make this better for our community, better for our students, and offer education. What we can't allow to happen is a generation of students get a larger gap and lose a year of education because they've already lost 2 months. We have to offer some quality education.
I want to thank our families for tuning in to our podcast again. And if you have any other questions and just want to give some comments, then you can email us at info@lawtonps.org. And be sure to follow us on our social media pages and our website. Sir, is there anything else you would like to add before we leave?
No, thank you for taking part and thank you for listening. And again, just remember your questions are valued and what you think is valued because, I got hired to be the superintendent at Lawton, therefore I work for you.
All right. With that, thank you guys, and we hope you have a safe and healthy day. Have a good one.